Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm going to show you how I'm using Lightroom masks to completely change the way that I edit photos. Okay guys, let's dive right into Lightroom. Here you can see I have an image of a female black bear that was along the roadside. The action happened quickly and my settings weren't dialed in exactly as I would have liked. The lighting was very harsh. All those things happen, but that's just the way it goes with wildlife sometimes. So I think that before I do anything else, we're going to make some global adjustments first. And this is getting closer to a point where I feel comfortable starting to edit. Okay, so we're gonna stick with that for right now, and then we can make some adjustments globally later if we need to. So I'm going to start out by using a mask, and we're going to let the software, the AI in Lightroom, just select our bear. And you can see it did a really great job of finding the bear. It didn't get down here, but for what I'm going to do here, it's really not the end of the world. So I'm selecting my bear right now because there's some areas, and we're going to turn off the overlay. I just hit O to turn that off, and you can definitely see here that we have some areas that are a little bit too dark. And I want to bring back some of the detail in there. I know that I crushed some of those blacks, but there is actually still a lot of detail in there that we can bring back. So my workflow, back in the old days, probably last year, would have been to get a brush, and it would have been to color on and try to use the dodge tool to brighten up those areas. The problem with doing that, if we turn this off and I grab a brush and I'm going to change this here to dodge and then try to brush that on a little bit, and I'm going to try to bring up some of those areas. Tell you what, let's boost up the shadows, and I'm going to make it kind of drastic. So there you can see like what I brushed on, and I'm able to bring back some of the detail. The problem with that is if I turn on the overlay, you're going to see, especially if we zoom in, that I went way beyond the bear's fur, and now I'm getting into the green. That's not ideal. Now this doesn't have to be perfect, but we can do a much better job than that. So we're going to go ahead and delete that mask. So a better way to do this is actually to click on the mask using the subject masking tool that the Lightroom AI has already created for us. And I'm going to click on these three dots. Whenever I click on those three dots, I now have the option to intersect the mask with a brush. So I'll click that, and it adds a new brush here underneath my mask. Now with that, I can again go and select Dodge Lighten, and now what I can do with that new brush is brighten in these areas. So again, I think that I'm going to bump the shadows up a bit. Now what's happening here that's super cool, if I show you the overlay, and I go beyond that mask, I'm coloring all the way over here into the greens. It's not moving beyond the mask. So we allow that mask to say, we're gonna stop the brush right here in this area and not go past that point. Isn't that awesome? So that way, we can be a little bit quick and a little bit sloppy beyond the space of the bear and not risk our brush going into the background. How amazing is that? So I'm going to take the overlay off, and you can definitely see, let's hit the backslash tool, and we're going to look at our previous edit that we had, and there's definitely a lot more detail now down here. I think I want to just add a little bit more. I've always loved this shot. I've loved seeing the flowers that were right there below between her legs, her front legs there. And I think that we've been able to add a little bit of detail in that fur that wasn't there before. Absolutely. So we brought some of that detail back, and we didn't extend into the background. So just a really quick and easy way to make this image look a lot better. So after a few more edits, this is the image that I was able to come up with. So here's another image. Now this image is interesting because it has two subjects. The mother bear is on the tree below. with 2 cubs above her. Now there were actually 4 cubs in this tree, but they were out of frame at the moment. They were up on higher branches. So we're going to use Lightroom AI to find our subject. And whenever we find our subject here, it's only finding the mother bear. It's not finding the 2 cubs up here. So we have to do just a little bit more work to help Lightroom realize that there's actually a second set of subjects in this image. So we're going to create a second mask, and we're going to click on Objects. Now, under this menu, Select Objects, we're going to go into the rectangle select mode. And I'm going to take my mouse and just make a box around those bear cubs. And Lightroom AI is going to do its voodoo, and it's going to eventually find those bear cubs and highlight them for us. So we'll have a second mask with just the cubs. And I mean, it does a fantastic job. I know that we have the branches in here still selected, and if I wanted to, if I was really that worried about it, I could go in here and deselect those. But honestly, for what we're doing here, it's not going to bother me because I'm pretty much just selecting the darker areas. We're gonna boost up the shadows. So it really shouldn't affect those branches that much. So at this point, we're going to do a little dodge and burn just like we did on the last one. So we're going to click up here and go to dodge. And we're going to boost the shadows and the dodge just a little bit. Actually feel like we're getting a little too bright on this guy. So I might actually take the exposure back down a bit. Right about there's okay. I might even take the highlights down a bit. And that's going to help me maintain some of the detail here. And I might bring the shadows up, and that's looking pretty good. And these guys are pretty small, so we're gonna be viewing them from a distance, and I think we're starting to highlight them really well. So we're gonna click on our mask here, and you can definitely see there's some areas down here where it didn't select the bear. But again, for what I'm doing here, to me, that's not really a deal breaker because I'm not so worried about the detail in the legs. I'm more worried about what's happening up here. So I'm gonna zoom in just a bit on our mother bear. And again, I'm going to select dodge. I don't wanna see that overlay at the moment. I wanna make sure that I select the mask. And with dodge here, we're going to boost up the shadows a bit. Might take the highlights down just a tad. And to me, we were able to bring out a lot of detail. If I show you the before and then after, wow, that made a huge difference. And you can see whenever I click that, the huge difference that we made in the background before I even started this. I did make some color changes prior to showing you the image with the general tools, the just global changes that we made. So we're gonna go ahead and back out on this. Now, I feel like this branch here is a little bit bright. In fact, I feel like everything around here is a little bit bright. So I could object select and just take the exposure down on that a bit. But what I think I'm gonna do is use a linear gradient. So we're gonna take that linear gradient and I'm gonna take it about down to where the mother bear starts. Okay, so with that linear gradient, we're going to do a little bit of burning this time. We don't want this linear gradient to affect our bear cubs. So what we're going to do is open the mask and hit subtract, and then we're going to select objects. And we're going to use that rectangle tool to select the bear cubs. Again, Lightroom AI is going to detect the bear cubs, and that will eventually remove them from the mask, and we'll be able to make changes just to the background now that will not affect the cubs. So I can dip down my exposure just a tad. I can take down the highlights, which are really what are bothering me here, and maybe even take down the whites a tad, and now we have that looking a little bit better. So we're just going to go ahead and make a few more adjustments, and I'll show you the final image. So now that I'm all done editing, you can see the before and after here, and it just took a few minutes to make this edit, and it was a relatively complex edit with all of these masks. In the past, it would have taken us a lot of time to go in with a brush and trace around all the edges of a subject and make those edits. But now with all of the AI tools that we have inside of Lightroom, it makes complex edits like this so simple.